I think that was the direction we had gotten at Planning Commission, was my understanding.
Right.
So,
Okay. And if the Planning Commission would like to have the hard copy pattern book in front of you, we're getting those printed out right now. So if you wanted to move on to other business on the agenda and delay the vote on this until a later portion of the agenda, we'll have those for you within about 5 minutes.
Yeah, it'd probably take me that long to read the consent agenda, so yeah, that would be great.
Matt, on the slide that you were showing where the garages have been increased in size, can you go back to that slide?
Ms. Green would have to. That one?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Is this neighborhood going to have city picking up the garbage?
No, sir. I think it was all public, and we have 2 compactors planned at the inside, or 1 compactor in the development, sorry, for the townhouses.
And the reason I ask, that's actually a good thing, because there's really no place for curbside pickup. It doesn't look like at all.
The single family would retain the city pickup. I believe that's how we would do that there. The townhouses we anticipate being taken to the compactor.
So what are the units right there at the top?
Those are the townhouses, and the single family is on the sheet right there.
Okay. What's the separation between those units actually, if we were to see
On
them?
the single family, they've got 5-foot setbacks. They could be as close as 10 feet if they were built on the setback.
So, and you say the setback, is the setback from the sidewalk?
Yes, sir.
So the drive could actually be as little as 10 foot from,
Yes. So the driveway would be, you talking about the front setback?
Right.
I'm sorry, 35 feet. I'm sorry.
up.
I'm sorry, 25 feet. I'm sorry, Mr.
Do y'all want to wait to see the books before we take a vote? Okay, all right, then we'll move on. That's all right, Matt. All right, moving on to consent agenda. Starting off with letter A, Waits Creek Crossing, Section 5, preliminary plat for 47 lots on 9.6 acre zone, RSA Type 1, located along Behringer Lane, O'Brien Lloyd LLC developer. Item B, Waits Creek Crossing, Section 4, preliminary plat for 21 lots on 4.2 acres zoned RSA Type 1 located along Behringer Lane, O'Brien Lloyd LLC developer. Item C, Waits Creek Crossing, Section 3, preliminary plat for 15 lots on 2 acres zoned RSA Type 1 located along Welltown Lane, O'Brien Lloyd developer. Item D, Hayden Cove preliminary plat for 46 lots on 19.61 acres, zone PUD along Veterans Parkway. Alcorn Properties LLC is the developer. Item E, Beasley Road subdivision, second re-subdivision of Lot 1. Final plat for 2 lots on 3.65 acres, zone CH located along Veterans Parkway and Franklin Road, Veterans Partnership developer. Item F, Magnolia Grove, Section 1, Phase 1, final plat for 96 lots on 26.47 acres, zone PRD located along Pitchers Lane, Han Shores, Tennessee LLC is the developer. Hooper's Bend, preliminary plat for 6 lots on 3.3 acres zoned RS15 located along North Thompson Lane, Shane Fogel, developer. Item H, Oakland Court, final plat for 3 lots on 18.71 acres, zone PRD, located along North Academy Street. Murfreesboro Housing Authority is the developer. Item I, Marketplace at Savannah Ridge, Phase 1, site plan for 43,680 square feet commercial building on 24.15 acres, zone PUD, located along Chevrolet Pike at Joe B. Jackson Parkway, BSM County Farm Road LLC developer. Item J, Murfreesboro Airport, site plan for parking lot expansion on 0.2 acres, zoned RS15, located along Airport Road, City of Murfreesboro applicant. Item K, mandatory referral to consider property swap with a private property owner for 1,906 square feet of property along North Thompson Lane, Shane Fogel applicant. Mandatory referral to consider property acquisition for right turn lane from Robert Rose Drive onto North Thompson Lane, City of Murfreesboro Public Works Department applicant. Item M, mandatory referral to consider the abandonment of a sanitary sewer easement located along Memorial Boulevard to serve Lot 4 of the Northgate Commercial Subdivision, Huddleston Steel applicant. Anyone in attendance, whether it be staff, the Planning Commission, or anyone in the audience would like to have anything removed from the consent agenda and talked about individually? If not, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Move for approval.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. All right, moving on to our gateway design overlay. Item A, Vantage Murfreesboro Lot 2, Manson Pike Retail. It's a retail final design and site plan review for 15,400 square feet commercial center on 2.2 acres, zone CF, RM16, and GDO1, located along Manson Pike. Egbert Ribeiro, developer. Margaret Ann.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Under our gateway portion of our agenda, we have an item for final design and site plan review. It is called the Manson Pike Retail, which is a part of Vantage Murfreesboro Lot 2. The subdivision name also references the rather large multifamily apartment complex located just behind this project to the south. That is called Vantage Apartments, and it currently has 288 dwelling units in that multifamily apartment. This project is for a commercial center, which is just over 15,000 square feet, and it is proposed to have multi-tenants, and is expected to provide services to the residents in this area. A small portion of the property is in the floodplain, actually not in the 100-year floodplain, but near the 100-year floodplain. They do have a note on the plans that the maximum square foot of the floor area that can be devoted to restaurant use is 35% to ensure they comply with that definition of commercial center. The building itself, I think, garnered quite a bit of discussion at initial design review last month, and there were some talking points on what they could do to help the building. I think the consensus in the end was that the brick in the back could remain as a base in lieu of the stone. However, you did feel strongly that there needed to be awnings added to the back of the building. The back of the building is actually an area that, of course, could be visible from the apartments, but also through the drive-through lane for the proposed in-unit restaurant user. So you should have laid out on your desks the revised elevations. We got those this morning to add those awnings. I haven't had an opportunity to look at it, but they did get those to us today to make sure to comply with that condition of approval. I went back and checked the minutes just to make sure that I was picking up what you conditioned, and you did condition approval upon those awnings being included in the back. So what is on the screen does not have those awnings, but you should have the revised, just a single sheet, not stapled in there, elevation. So I'll go ahead and allow the team to provide some additional information regarding the project. If you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them.
Good afternoon, Vice Chairman Halliburton, members of the Planning Commission. I'm Bill Huddleston of Huddleston Steel Engineering. This is the same project that came before you for initial design review last month. Not much has changed site plan wise, but as Ms. Green said, we did make some upgrades to the building architecture based on last month's meeting and staff's comments, which we appreciate. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Bob Thorne, architect, Michael Hyman, architect, to discuss those changes.
And Mr. Thorne, we do have the material sample board. It's on the floor behind Austin if you need that to discuss the project.
What you're receiving this morning are the revised elevations, and there are two items that were on your list that we needed to accomplish. One was the exterior elevations needed to show awnings over the rear doors, and those awnings have been added. The next thing was item number 2 for ground recode uses facade surface shall incorporate a minimum of not 50% window or void areas. And what we have done is redesigned the 4 elevations, but primarily the front elevation, but all 4 now comply with the 50%. The side and rear elevations comply with 35%. After discussion with Margaret Ann, she said that would probably be sufficient. But what we did, we accomplished this by creating the void areas with a combination of the glazing systems and projecting selected brick, stone, and tile elements forward from the building to create the recesses, which were the void areas. So that's how we accomplished that. And then the numbers are added to the chart there, the void percentages. And then the other item that was on your list was number 9. It was to, the site photometric plan did not have the correct background as far as the outdoor eating area, and that was also revised to reflect that. So now the photometric site plan matches the civil drawings. That's all we have to revise.
Questions or comments for the applicant?
And I will confirm that when we got together with the architect, the way he's meeting our void calculations is consistent with what we've done in the past. So I know he said that, but I'll just confirm that that's what we agreed.
Questions, comments, motions?
I like the improvements to the project. I think it's well done as far as the design and the appearance of the building. The traffic looks like it'll flow well, and the stacking lanes, everything looks to be adequate. So unless there's no other comments or questions, I'll move for approval subject to all staff comments.
Sir. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? It passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving on, item B under Gateway, Carpenter Group, re-subdivision of lots 7 and 8. Final plat for 2 lots on 3.6 acres, zone highway industrial and GDO 4, located along Medical Center Parkway and Ridgely Road. Hurdle Family Limited Partnership Developer. Austin. All right.
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chairman, whatever you are today.
There you go.
This is part of the Carpenter Group subdivision, as you mentioned before. This Lot 7 is the Dollar General. Lot 8 is currently undeveloped. You've seen this before in the past. In 2017, they had the line where it's proposed to be, and they moved it to where it currently is, and now they're proposing to move it back. You're seeing this because it's partly in the GDO. Other than that, there's nothing really to it. They've addressed all the staff comments we've given them. It's in good order. If you have any questions for me or Matt Taylor, who represent SEC, if you have any questions for him as well.
Any questions, comment from the planning commission?
Subject to all staff comments.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? It passes. Thank you. All right, do we want to listen to Matt again? Since we've got these in front of us
And
now.
I apologize, some of the, goes from being right side up to upside down on several pages.
So we're back to old business and D.R. Horton application with respects to Northwest Broad.
If you look at page 18, it has the updated townhouse elevations that we talked about earlier. So on the top, really the top and the bottom pictures there, probably the ones you're most concerned about. The bottom one does a very good job of depicting what that side elevation with those windows and that water table and wrap porch will look like. We'll also have a tree at each end of those driveways. You can see it's kind of cut off a little bit because we wanted to highlight the building itself, but on the left and right end, we'll have trees and all those. And then, of course, have some shrubs kind of up around their porches.
Matt, what's the, and I may be just looking, so looking at page 18,
Yes, sir.
in where the cars can park in the driveway,
Yes, sir.
if you're looking at the car on the left-hand side,
Yes,
there's something in front of it. What is that?
A little grassed area, a little walk up to the front porch there. So they can, when they're doing the little grass area, try to break up that area up there by the little landscaping at the base of the front door. And we'll make that a more formal sidewalk. Keeps people away from that front door a little bit.
What percentage of this property was light industrial before this request was made?
What percentage?
Roughly,
You're gonna ask me to do some math here, Mr. Smotherman, Councilman Smotherman?
you just got to be close. I'm not-
2 acres of the overall property was zoned light industrial, and the overall property is 65 acres. 2 acres is light industrial, 11 acres was RS-15.
So a very small portion of it was light industrial.
I think the total land area I showed about 78 and a half, so it's like 1.5%.
And if it had been developed as RS-15 as it was zoned, would it have, what would have been the number of lots that would have been available on this property?
I would say if you take out the commercial area,
11 acres, RS-15.
or no, the commercial area.
Yeah, and the bulk of the property is zoned RM in the county, which is medium density residential.
Which is about 20,000 square foot lots.
But if it
Close
were just to be
RS-15.
zoned into the city, it would
Oh, I
come in
see.
as RS-15,
Yeah,
correct?
So I would say there would be about 72 acres left of that, Councilman Smotherman, and maybe get 2 2 units the acre. It's been a while since I did an RS-15, so it's hard for me to get a good judge on that.
Got one on the consent agenda.
Yeah, that one's not typical.
That's a long time.
Maybe 150.
Long time ago is relative.
Yes, it is. Maybe about 150 on city councilman. Take the commercial out, maybe get another 10 if you leave the commercial, if you don't have commercial up front.
So roughly, we're going from 150 potential to, if it were just brought in straight zoning, to 278.
379. I think the 278 is just the townhouses.
Right.
Wow, yes, sir.
I guess I'll express my concern with this whole project. When you look at increasing density from what it would be zoned if it were just brought into the city to what this request is asking for, and partially because of the location of it, it's not in a residential area where we've already got the services readily available as far as police protection, fire protection, those type of things that would be residential services that I know commercial needs those as well, but not at the demand levels that we'll see on the residential properties. I think we're supposed to look at properties as to what their best use is when they come in. I'm struggling with the best use of this property because I'm just not sure that the location of this, I think, is so close to Smyrna that I think that if I lived there, I would shop in Smyrna, which means the city of Murfreesboro is probably not even going to get the sales tax off the property or the sales tax off of it when they go shopping. So I'm not sure that this is the best use for this property.
We understand your concern there, Mr. Smotherman. I think you said something similar to that during the public hearing, and since then, we actually did some measuring to kind of the major shopping points in Smyrna versus Murfreesboro, and all the points in Murfreesboro are still closer drive time than the items in Smyrna. The closest thing in Smyrna, you'd really have to go to Sam Ridley because the Kroger on Broad Street closed down. And so we've got Kroger and we've got the Avenue that are both closer in Murfreesboro than any of the conventional shopping areas in Smyrna. And the easiest way to get to this property, unless you work at this is going to be driving directly off 840 on the Broad Street. And we are trying to bring some commercial to the front of this property, so we hope, it's not going to be a grocery store site by any means, but we do, we hope to generate some of our own tax revenue and tax generators off the front of this property. And we've also got a Dollar General relatively close to the site that I think would be good for some of those kind of real quick needs, just down on Florence Road across the railroad tracks there.
And I guess my bigger concern would be the sewer allocation situation of the number of sewer taps would be involved with the development, because, it's roughly 4 times what it would be if it were brought in under what it's currently zoned as, if it were just brought in as a RS-15 property. So
and this, I understand the sewer thing, we've been talking about that for quite some time, and this one, according to the ordinance, would be exempt from that just because it had been submitted prior to that adoption process.
I'll make some little comments because I know we've talked a lot about this, and certainly respect Councilman Smotherman's perspective. I do think we've asked the applicant to make some changes to that related to the straight run of towns we had, and then some of the elevations and the journey Journey Pure site, as well as the buffers against the industrial property. So, and I guess in addition to that, from the original concept to include the commercial frontage, sort of from a highest and best use perspective. So I appreciate the changes that have been made. I do think Mr. Smotherman brings up a valid concern related to the density coming into the city, because I know we're having lots of discussions about that at the council level. But I do think this project, like some others, from my perspective, purely, we've been talking about long enough that I don't know that I specifically have said that up to this point. So I'm happy to make a motion to approve as presented, subject to all staff comments. If there's somebody who wants a second.
We have a second? Or any other comments?
I mean, my concern ultimately is the density of it, and it's just, should we annex property into the city to be high density? And my feeling is probably not. I mean, there's multiple projects out there that have been out there for a long time that have been in consideration, but just, I don't see this as raising the bar to the point that it would justify what they're asking for. So,
I guess from my point of view, when we look at a project like this, I'm also looking at, from the city standpoint, we've got to find a place for some affordable housing too. I don't know what price point you guys are going to be at, but I would hope that they would be blue-collar affordable housing for people that could move to our city, because not everyone can afford the big $400,000 houses we're putting up a lot of. So
I think that's exactly our target market, especially for the townhouses, and I think the single family, some of the single family will be in that same market as well. So absolutely. And I think the location demands that. I mean, you've got good access to that kind of workforce there.
well, I'll give it a second.
All right, we have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
no.
Motion passes.
Thank y'all.
All right, we are moving on to plats and plans. University Villas and Lion Property, Master Plan and Preliminary Plat for 2 lots on 20.66 acres zone, Commercial Highway and RM16 located along John Bragg Highway, Front Street Partners Developer. Mr. Barbie, I believe you're presenting this one.
Good afternoon, Chairman. Vice Chairman. As you mentioned, this is the University Villas and Lions property, master plan and preliminary plat. The preliminary plat portion is for 2 lots. That's a total of 20.66 acres, zoned commercial highway, residential multifamily 16, RSA type 2 and RS6. We received a revised plan yesterday, addressed most of our comments. It's generally in good order at this time. They have added the additional street access along both the west and south as we requested, along with some additional amenity areas, mail kiosks, and other items. The balance of this property is single family, and any preliminary plat that follows will need to conform to the master plan that's submitted.
And just as a heads up, there are 2 copies of the master plan in front of you. One is stapled to the preliminary plat, and one is loose. The loose one actually came in addressing our comments. It's underneath that, the Carpenter group. It's the loose. Yes, right there. That is, there were 2 main concerns that we had regarding the master plan, and that was the Stub Street to the south and the Stub Street coming in from Chandler Place. Mr. Smotherman, I see that you are
I'm all over the place, you're right.
There you go. There was Chandler Place stub, as well as we wanted another stub to the south, and they submitted a second revised version of the master plan yesterday, and it appears to have addressed all of our comments. And as Mr. Barbie mentioned, the subsequent sections of the single family would have to comply with this master plan and honor all those street connections, and as well as the amenities that are shown. And Mr. Barbie and I will be happy to answer any questions. And all of this would be on step.
Including the single family?
Yes.
So at what point would the roads be put in that you're talking about?
With each section. So
Okay.
there are two road improvements that are on our major transportation plan. One is the north-south road that you see that runs directly to the west of the apartment complex. I think it's labeled Lions Farm Parkway on there. That is the extension of Irby Lane. So it's hard to envision where Irby Lane is in relation to this property, but our major transportation plan has Irby Lane extending to the northeast, curving around and crossing Beals Road and running through the Hall property to the south and then up through this property. And so anytime that we have a master plan and a preliminary plat, we would expect those documents to honor our major transportation plan and to make provisions for those. So we're seeing that roadway as a part of this plan, as well as the Haven Drive extension. Haven Drive right now terminates at the rear of the car wash that's on South Rutherford Boulevard that was completed just last year, I believe. And so Haven Drive would be extended eastward through this development as development occurs. So we would expect all of these connections, including the ones on the major transportation plan, to be honored as sections of this development come in. But what is, as Mr. Barbie mentioned, what's before you right now as far as the preliminary plat is just the northern section of Lions Farm Parkway, as well as the lot where the apartment complex, which is the next item on the agenda, will be located, and the field for the step system, which will be transferred to the city after it's completed.
So Lions Farm Parkway will end at about right there, I guess? Is that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
And you can see it better. That's the master plan sheet. So there's, on the preliminary plat sheet, you can see specifically what they're proposing to do. With the...
I see it. I'm with you.
And all of this is serviced through step system by design.
Yes, sir.
The front step build solely from the apartments over to for the apartments and
Mr. Parker, do you know the answer to that question?
That section in the front that you see, it'll serve the multifamily development and the commercial parcels that'll be fronting down Bragg Highway.
right. Okay.
Jack, if y'all could introduce yourselves.
Sure. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'm Jack Parker with Catalyst Design Group, civil engineer for this project. With Chad Gilbert with Front Street Partners, the developer, representing the developer. So,
We can have dual engineers working on the preliminary plat and master plan. Mr. Huddleston, back there in the back, designed the master plan, and Mr. Parker designed the preliminary plat, both of which are part of 7A on the agenda today. So it's unusual that we have a submittal that has different sheets from different engineers, but a little bit tricky to navigate sometimes. But
It's like having too many attorneys.
it's true. Well, as far as attorneys, we only have 2 in here, so
Yeah.
less than usual. And so this particular item is just the master plan and preliminary plat. The site plan would be the next item on the agenda.
All right, any other questions regarding this master plan and preliminary plat? I'll get that word right before it's over with. If not, is there a motion on this item?
Second.
Is that subject to?
Subject to all staff comments, sorry. Yes, sir. Thank you.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. All right, moving on to item B, having to do with this submission farmhouse, multifamily site plan for 288-unit apartment complex on 20-acre zone RM16 located south of John Bragg Highway, Front Street Partners developer. Marina.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon, Commissioners. This property is zoned RM16. The developer is proposing to construct an apartment complex of 288 units. This is at a density of 14.4 dwelling units per acre. The overall site is 20 acres. And as Matthew indicated, is part of the master plan, and this complex will be on the STEP system, septic tank effluent pumping is what that stands for. So there will be 12 three-story residential buildings comprised of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom, and 3-bedroom units. The number of bedrooms is what dictates the number of parking stalls. Based upon the bedroom configuration, the apartment complex does comply with the parking standards. There's also going to be a clubhouse and a pool house, as well as 9 single-story, single-car garage buildings. We'll have a mail kiosk that's next to the amenity building, and the developer's also proposing to have a greenhouse as an amenity as part of this project. The buildings are going to be constructed of brick, primed and painted hardy board siding, brick trim, standing seam metal awnings, clad windows, and fiberglass shingle roofing. The developer has proposed this elevation that's primarily white. Staff has conveyed to the developer that we've consistently not approved white buildings, even for apartment complexes, just due to the bright color of its nature. It's not consistent with the Murfreesboro design guidelines. Worked back and forth with the developer on some alternative colors, but they were still, in our opinion, fairly bright, and so the developer wanted to bring this proposal forward to the commission as originally proposed for your consideration today. So the applicant is here, as well as his engineer, for any questions, and I'm happy to answer any questions as well. Thank you.
So do y'all want to talk about the look, the color, all that kind of stuff?
Yes, sir.
Because I know that's...
Material boards
There
here
is-
as well for you to,
Okay.
physical boards for you to actually see. So the intent of the color scheme is to go along with the overall concept of a farmhouse development on a historically farmland piece of property. So the color scheme that you see, and even the materials, are in keeping architecturally.
How much can you deadlift?
Golly.
Can you
Careful, there are
import some of those
sharp
farm guys?
There are some sharp edges, so be very careful with that.
You guys not care about what's it cost?
Good thing I'm not working out.
So this color, it's not strictly white, it's an alabaster. I'm not an architect, so I'm not going to try to go over the differences between true white and alabaster, but the intent is, as I mentioned, to create an overall theme of a farmhouse living community, kind of a farm to table, if you would. There's going to be a community garden. There'll be a greenhouse for folks, for residents to be able to grow their own food. So the desire would be to have buildings that match that type of architecture, that type of feel of your traditional farmhouse. So that's why we wanted to bring that before you today for your consideration.
And this has been developed elsewhere too, is that a correct statement or no?
Yes, there's a couple developments in the Midwest. There's one that I think copied our idea, misspelled the word farmhouse. They put a little German in there, H-A-U-S-E. But anyway, we, a good idea doesn't care where it came from. But as you progress, maybe south down Woodbury Highway down 96, the whole idea is that it's a progression of, we're kind of on that, we're right at that threshold of leaving all that retail and quickly being out into farmland. And there's purpose behind this. It's not that we're not trying to win a debate or an argument about what's right and what's not. And Reno has been considered through the whole process. There's not really any LRV standards, and we try to maneuver through some of those, but at the end of the day, we're trying to get a product that communicates to our residents, hey, what we're about.
I know, I'll make a couple of comments. I went back by TDK's project on Medical Center Parkway that is the newest one that's being built. And it's from the road, of course, I'm talking about Medical Center Parkway, that look, it's the contrast I think looks good, from the white and the dark pieces. Here we don't have that same contrast, but that's not what you're trying to, that's not what you're trying to get to. In looking at this, I don't know if, you've got on it, and I'm no designer by any stretch of the imagination, but I didn't know if you've got awnings that gives it that, in certain areas, that gives it that look.
That was the intent of this thing, to
right.
create that contrast. The dark gutters, those dark cedar brackets up there, we're trying to populate it with those dark contrasting elements.
Right. I just didn't know if those awnings could be multiplied, I guess is what, and I don't know what that would do to the look of the building, and even if that's applicable, even can be done,
It's difficult to appreciate from just a flat two-dimensional rendering, but when you see this in 3 dimensions and your view shed includes multiple buildings, you'll see those awnings everywhere, and that is what you don't appreciate in that rendering too is that shed roof coming off the main entry. That's sizable, and that contrast on that's really pronounced, and we get that. We want that too. The white's not as effective for us if you don't have the contrasting pop of dark.
Right.
So we're after that as well.
Vice Chairman Halliburton and Planning Commission members, just so you have some context of why we bring this up in the design guidelines. It states that primary building materials shall not be bright or vibrant colors. It says that the secondary building materials may be brighter than that which is used on the primary building materials, and so those are under the standards, and under the guidelines, it says avoid bright and vibrant colors for primary materials. Bright colors may be used on accent elements to create interest, and so I think those are the primary reasons why we bring this to you today for discussion. And what constitutes a bright or vibrant color? There's some discretion on.
Not really on this. I guess for me, I'm looking 20 years down the road. What is this building going to look like, and how are we going to be able to control whether it looks faded, whether the dust has came in and has the brick looking bad? That's the challenge for me more than anything. I think it's a pretty building, but we won't have control over this being an eyesore, a bright eyesore.
appreciate a perspective like that. I might, you know, there's always multiple perspectives. You hope that a product like this is appealing enough that, you know, the rents and the income generated from it enable it to stay as attractive as it is. You know, hardy, you typically paint it every 7-8 years. Brick is no different. So, you know, in 20 years, it's seen 3 new paint jobs. So, you know, right around that 20-year mark, you're into your 3rd one. That's one of the luxuries of this kind of using that cementitious board and painted brick is you can update it.
One of the tools that planners often use for brightness is light reflective values, which is associated with paint colors. So anything that's over 50% is bright or brighter because it's more than 50%, and anything less is tending towards the darker shades. So we worked together and went back and forth in different variations, and so there were some options that you did consider that were less than the 50%.
There were, and Marine's correct. It was a good iterative back and forth. Some of those LRVs in the 50s, you know, they were so close to this, and when she made the steering suggestion, hey, try to find something in the 50s, and we did that, but then at the end of the day, she was like, well, that's still kind of bright. Well, you know, it's hard to work in nebulous parameters. I mean, I can appreciate your position right now. You're having to right now define what's bright. You know, one man's white might be bright, but the other one is lack of color altogether. So it's a there's a, you know, 6 one, half dozen the other perspective. But at the end of the day, we thought, you know what, let's just put our best foot forward in the product we're trying to create. I mean, obviously our interests are aligned. We want an attractive product. I mean, we make more money if it looks good. So we've not put something out there that we think will be detrimental to margins and profits. So in this instance, I feel like our interests do align.
And my studies in college was in art, and in all my studies of art, I've never heard white referred to as a color. White is a shade. It's not a color. It's a neutral. But so you can't say it's a bright color because it's not a color.
Agreed.
But I do think, in your defense, that if you're looking for a farmhouse look, when you think of typical southern plantation homes, you would think of a large white home.
That's what we're at.
And I think that's the farmhouse effect you're going after. And I think I find the property to be the picture, and I know it's not accentuated with the darks because of, in fact, it's just a two-dimensional picture, but I think there's no question that you know, it could be an attractive building. I think with all the conversation we've had in the recent past about whiskey molds and different types of molds and bacteria and stuff growing on the side of buildings, it doesn't matter if it's a green building or a tan building. If it's not well maintained and upkept, then it's not going to look good. And I think that applies to white as well. So I personally am comfortable with it. Is it a little bit different? I think it is than what we would normally look at, but that doesn't mean it's wrong just because it's different. And I truly just imagining this out there on that property, I think could be an attractive project. Concerned about what it's going to look like 20 years down the road. I absolutely understand where he's coming from on that, but like you say, with good maintenance and upkeep, I think it would continue to be an attractive building for many years. It's not a color that's like mauve or Carolina blue that you're going to put up today, and then 20 years from now you'll look at it and you go, why in the world did anybody ever paint anything that color?
We had a previous applicant that said that his paint would last for 20 years, so you might want to talk to him if this gets approved.
Sign me up.
I won't mention any names.
I wish.
Motion.
One quick question. Are the brick caps a different color?
No, sir, the roll-off would be the same.
It's the same one?
It'd be the same, yeah. But that's...
It just looks different.
Well, that's the shadow we're after. That's the very architectural feature. That's a good catch. I mean, that when you paint something like that, it's like trim on that wall, it's the same, but we're trying to accentuate and catch that light shadow underneath it. That's deliberate.
But the shadows in the mortar joints naturally going to
That's
give
it.
it a darker
Yeah,
appearance than
Yes, sir.
where it's just a hardy board.
Yep. Just different textures and shadows.
I mean, the only comment that I'll make is it's hard, again, it's like Mr. Gilbert said, it's hard to see it from a two-dimensional, if that's the right way, of the way this looks. I mean, it definitely has setbacks and features to it that even though it may look like one color, I think it'll have some contrast in when it's actually built. You know, the awnings pieces, I think if there could be more, that'd be great, because I think that helps with the contrast. In the end, you know, I agree with Eddie. You know, it's like anything else. If something is not maintained, it is what it is. I also understand staff's position in trying to go by the design guidelines, but this doesn't give me great heartburn, I guess is the best way to say it.
Question.
Yes.
So, not to get at, so on your, have you thought of putting lighting,
Lighting?
like light fixtures
You know, that's a...
to give the blank canvas?
You could do that. It is difficult to say who's going to get that light bearing down in their window and who controls that. So we will do site lighting, but in terms of just putting it right over a specific tenant's window, that is a tricky formula to solve.
Has this been through kind of the SEPTED process from a lighting and landscaping process?
We encourage the developers to contact the police department or SEPTED. I'm not sure if y'all did.
We submitted the photometrics, so yeah, I think we've addressed lighting and...
Lighting.
And it's a multi, it involves more than just lighting.
It's monitoring of parking lots and gates and stuff like that, where you're actually monitoring the vehicles that are on the property, and those type of things.
So, any other questions, comments before motions?
I'll just make a comment. I would personally, with it being a multifamily site, it gives me great comfort to have the concrete housing crew look at that from a SEPTED standard perspective. So my preference would be for them to have signed off on that, landscaping, lighting, that kind of thing. So just a comment.
Are y'all familiar with that process or not?
No, I haven't get that way. Yeah.
Okay.
It's kind of like it's almost like LEED. So it's like a checkbox. They kind of check off. They see where the safety lights are and make sure that you don't have shrubs right up against the windows where, you know, the bad guy can hide behind. And so 3-foot clearance of your vegetation, nothing up against the window, safe lighting, security fencing, those types of things.
So who do
And then
they
if
contact?
I can get y'all that information.
Okay.
Police department.
Okay.
I'll follow up on Kent's comment, because I really like the concept of, and I know a lot of the developments that we're currently looking at have the can lightings and stuff like that are on 24 hours, or not 24 hours, whenever it's dark, they're photoset triggered to come on. These open spaces where you've got the box, the shadow boxes basically, I really think that a dark fixture in that area would serve two purposes. It kind of pulls in kind of the appearance that we're concerned with, and it also addresses a lighting issue up next to the building. I I understand your concern saying, well, we don't want the light shining into, your apartment if you happen to have one. But with them fairly close to the wall, there would be very little penetration of the light being directed into a window because it's on outside of a wall. And so I really don't think it would be that big of a challenge to address that and potentially, the challenge we've got with all apartments right now is the crime issue. And the better lighted they are on the outside, the less risk I feel that we personally have of people wanting to loiter in the darkness and or to hide out maybe in a dark area. And we don't want you to avoid landscaping around them because, but with well-lit landscaping, I think it can be a win-win. And I think to Ken's point, I don't see anything in this that really gives me a feeling that anything other than the parking lot lighting and stuff like that there's a whole lot of lighting around these buildings. And so I think that would give you an opportunity to have a win-win situation where you'd have lighting on the outside of the building because the lighter shade on the outside of the building, it would illuminate really well and perhaps reduce the number of shadows and stuff that you're experiencing. And I think there's an opportunity there for the lighting to actually be a real asset to the project.
We would be, I don't have any immediate objections to that anyway, just the little challenge that I mentioned there. And then the other thing would be some of the orientation of the buildings. I want to make sure that the guy who's right there, that isn't blaring in on him too before I would commit to say, hey, I know I can knowingly put it right there every time.
Right.
But I'm certainly happy to explore dotting them in there.
But with directional lighting, you can shoot it pretty much down the side of the building, I think, is kind of more what we're leaning towards, something that would be more of a shaded type light with a shade on the top of it, so that cast outward but more downward.
More of an accent.
And I can almost, in my mind, I can see the farm light.
That's what you got it. That's what I'm talking about.
I get it. I just, I would love to have that. I want to make sure I'm not just burning somebody out when they can't sleep.
Right. But up next to the wall, I don't think you're going to blast
I think
it.
there's opportunity for that.
Yeah,
I agree.
I mean, if there's lights in the hallway, doesn't mean that it's going to be lights inside this room here. So there's an opportunity to have a light on the other side of the wall that would light the parking lot, the sidewalk area.
And I think it'd be lovely at night. I mean, I think it would look great. So, I mean, I get it.
All right, any other questions, comments, motions?
So what was the difference in the shading?
What is the
You couldn't
difference?
see the difference in the shaded paint, the 50%?
Well, this is, I can't remember, but I think these were in the 90s. This is like 90% LRD.
Yeah.
And a 58% and 60% was much more muted. It was more in the beige tones, like the light beige tones that you see on the wall here.
It was in the farmhouse.
Oh, I thought, my take was that it was really close. And if it was really close, then I would probably prefer the other, just because we'll set a precedent if we go with super bright.
I don't know if we have any examples of it.
But we just kind of.
I mean, if it's not close, then it's not going to accomplish the goal.
It's not.
I guess it's it's opinions, but there is a difference between the really bright. This is definitely on the bright wheel, and going halfway down takes it way down. Where you guys have been at on other apartment complexes and buildings is a little bit lower than that. So that's where it really was hard. We were trying to really push for consistency.
Where's the TDK project? Which shading is it?
The TDK project.
I think that one is fairly bright though, but I'm not sure where that came in terms of design guidelines and the previous approvals of projects.
And it's not monotonous. It's not just 12 stark white buildings. It's broken up, different building types.
Exterior lighting on it.
I guess the project that's across from is at Far East Market on Main Street that had all the different colors. I think that has a much worse effect than to have something that's consistent. And I think they've recently repainted those now so that they're not multicolored.
Is that your project?
No.
Okay.
But on this one, the whole idea is that landscape is 20 acres and these white buildings dotted on that green field around a common garden and greenhouse. It's just,
How's the greenhouse going to work? I mean, how?
it's a support. It's supposed to be a support structure. It's
not that big.
It's not. It's intended to be as much eye candy as it is function. But what it is down that corridor, that pool. You're supposed to be able to see out, and then you're going to see that garden. It sets up kind of in a neat crosshair where we can have some community farm to table stuff, the garden, and then that greenhouse is kind of that focal center that drags your view over that.
It's only 200 square feet, so in the midst of three-story buildings.
Yeah, I mean, it's 20 by. I mean, it's going to announce itself. You're going to know it's there. It's a neat looking window screened in greenhouse that just would make it's a garden house as much as it's a greenhouse. It's not meant to grow. We're not going to competition with hydroponic strawberries or anything like that. It's just it's a place to have the wheelbarrow and the shovel and people to store their gloves and go out there and play in the dirt a little bit.
But even that space would give you an opportunity for seedlings and stuff like that if you're trying to start something for an outdoor garden. Will there be any outdoor garden area outside it?
Yes, sir. That's the whole plan of this thing. Is there's a garden area as big as that pool that's going to be just right offset of the pool and that whole big green space there.
So it's primarily for spring plantings when you would either start your flowers early or get your tomato plants in early or something like that might be going on.
And the whole idea is too to create that community. It's a social event too. People go on Saturday mornings and figure out who else gardens and just make a new friend group out of that.
Yeah. I like it. I like that a lot better than a bar park area.
We're excited. We're excited about it. We really are.
There's a dog run there though too.
Yeah, but I mean that seems to have been with the new one that every somebody says this is our amenity, and I really think that a neighborhood garden and a gathering place and educational for children as well, and I think that would be a real nice amenity to the project.
Thank you.
So is that a motion?
I will make the motion, subject to all staff comments as well as commission comments, and I hope that we seriously look at the farmhouse lights, for lack of a better term, because I think that's what they're called. Yes, sir.
And that's to approve, right?
To approve, yes.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right. All those in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All, it passes.
Thanks.
All right. Thank you. All right, moving on to item C, under plats and plans, College Point Center, site plan for 96-unit apartment complex and 6,000 square feet multi-tenant commercial center on 4.95 acres, zone PUD, located along Old Las Casas Road and Greenland Drive. Dr. Agrawal is the developer, and man, you've just gotten worse looking. This is not Miss Kerr.
No, but I will try to adequately fill in.
Yeah, go ahead.
Miss Kerr is feeling under the weather today, so I will try to help her out. And I can't do her the time that she spent on reviewing this plan justice. I know that it was a lot of hard work on her part. But as you can see in the staff comments, she's gotten it down to 2 planning staff comments. So over the course of several months, she worked very hard. This is the apartment complex located along Old Las Casas Road, as well as the multi-tenant retail building located at the northeast corner of Old Las Casas Road and Greenland Drive. The PUD zoning plan was approved by the council about 6 months ago. It was delayed at council for quite a number of months until they made some improvements to the plan. One of those improvements was that, coming out of Planning Commission, the condition was that the area where the commercial building was proposed to be located was to be left as a park-like setting until such time as the commercial was to be built. Well, they got to council, and council conditioned the approval of this on both the commercial and the multifamily being constructed simultaneously. And so in the pattern book that was approved by council, there's actually a condition that there shall be no C of O's issued for the multifamily portion of the development prior to the issuance of a C of O for the commercial portion of the multifamily, or the commercial portion of the PUD. Also, Mr. Roundtree and Mr. Huddleston consulted with MPD, got some features put in the pattern book that were recommended by MPD to meet its crime-free multifamily housing standards. And so, with that being said, the site plan and the architectural elevations are generally in good order. Ms. Kerr has requested that any approval of this plan be conditioned upon staff's final review and approval of the architecture prior to the issuance of any permits, just to tie up any loose ends that she may have standing out there. But the plans are in good order, and we would ask that any approval be made subject to all staff comments. Be happy to answer any questions, those that I can answer. Don't know how many I'll be able to answer because in Ms. Kerr's stead, but I'll try.
So were there site improvements, not site improvement, the look of the building or design of the building recommended changes by the city council that are incorporated with this, or not necessarily?
I don't think there were necessarily architectural changes. I think that as I mentioned, there were the septet changes.
Right.
I think those were more kind of small things, like the peepholes in the doors and things of that nature. But that and the requirement that the commercial be built simultaneously with the multifamily were the main things. So some of the things that MPD recommended were 180-degree peepholes in all front doors, 1-inch deadbolts in all exterior doors, 3-inch screws and strike plates and at least one in each door hinge, lift and slide protection on all accessible windows, hinges pinned on outward opening doors, adequate security lighting in working order, clearly visible address and building numbers, properly trimmed landscaping. All suites are to be leased no lease by room. That was another thing, is it included in the pattern book that all of the units were to be leased as units and not by room.
Interesting. I guess the city can mandate that?
Yes, as a part of the plan development.
And the reason for that was there was the concern by the council of, or I'll at least speak for myself on the council. My concern was because of the location of this right next to the university, there's always concern that, you may rent 3 units in a quad to freshmen in college, and then some 35-year-old man may rent a room, and so we would rather it be rented as a unit rather than as a quad, and so
I think it has merit. I'm not disagreeing with it. I just hadn't heard of that before.
It's really a safety concern about what potentially could occur as far as the leasing of units, because there's nothing that says we can restrict by age or gender or race or any of those things. So with that in mind, I think that was the intention of trying to restrict that to that type of rental.
So did they show the design? Where is it designed like the quads are, or is it designed like a regular apartment?
Their
Floor plans.
yeah. You have floor plans in the pattern book.
It is. Because it'd be difficult to lease a quad like that.
The architect, Brian Oliver, is here.
Okay.
The pattern, sorry, there's no floor plans on the sheets on the large, you got that. But they're two-bedroom apartments.
They're just regular two-bedroom?
Yes, sir, two-bedroom apartments.
Then you can do that. Okay.
As well as the civil team.
And of course, I'm not on the city council, but I think it's a great recommendation because of this spot, that the requirement to develop the commercial property along with it. I think that is a great recommendation. All right, any questions for the architect or for staff on this?
I don't think there's any question about the request for the commercial side of it, because we're trying to improve the quarter there, and definitely where you're pulling in and out of the Greenland Drive parking lot, we want it to look as attractive as possible. And what we didn't want was for the apartments to be built out and the property just be left as a green space or something, as we had initially even considered maybe a park area or something like that, which may even be worse than a green space. But at that particular location anyway, so it's certainly something that we will be glad to see once it comes back to council with that change.
All right, is there any other comments or motion?
Move for approval, subject to any and all staff comments.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? It passes. All right, we're moving on to new business. Item A, annexation plan of services, an annexation petition for approximately 1.6 acres located at 3505 Florence Road. Wiseman Investments applicant. Marlene.
Yes, sir. Our first item of new business is for you to consider scheduling a public hearing for a petition for annexation. We received a property located along Florence Road. You can see the property identified on the map before you. The property is in purple. The current city limits is in the light gray color. And what is unshaded, or in the white area, is in the unincorporated area of Rutherford County. You can see the property is surrounded currently by city limits. And the owner is the investment group you mentioned, and they have submitted a petition to me requesting annexation. They've hired Mr. Roundtree to represent them. He's representing them on an application for annexation and zoning. Our request is that you schedule this for a public hearing February 5th.
Any questions or motion?
We can schedule a public hearing February 5th.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's scheduled. All right. Zoning application for approximately 1.6 acres located at 3505 Florence Road to be zoned CF simultaneous with annexation. Wiseman Investments applicant.
Thank you again. This item 8B is a companion to 8A, and that is the same property. As I mentioned, they did submit an application for a zoning change simultaneous with annexation. The property is currently zoned RM in the county. That's medium density residential that has, or allows about a 20,000 square foot lot. It is developed currently with one single family home, and you can see in some shapes on the map a notch, and that's an existing cemetery on the site. And our maps indicate that the cemeteries are already in city limits. Property to the north is zoned CF, that's Fringe Commercial District. Property to the west and south is zoned RS6, that's Single Family Residential District, our smallest RS district, well, smallest outside of our downtown area, with a 6,000 square foot lot size. They initially approached staff with considering putting townhomes here. I suggested they not move in that direction because this property is small and there is a large, massive property currently zoned RSA Type 2 to allow townhomes. And so generally you would like a larger property so that the HOA could be large enough to maintain the properties and the infrastructure that they'll need to maintain. So their request then was to zone CF similar to the property to the north. I have talked to Mr. Roundtree and told him that single-family residential uses are not permitted in the CF district by right. The house has been vacant for quite some time. He's indicated to me that the investment company that owns the house would look to redevelop the site commercially. So he wants to go ahead and make the application today, but CF zoning, knowing that it could not be a single-family rental property under new zoning district. I suggest that it be scheduled for public hearing the same night as the annexation, but I'd like to offer Mr. Roundtree an opportunity to provide additional information.
Yeah, the only thing additionally, Morgan, is that currently the house is, they do have a renter in the house, and so just want to make sure that was clear. And like you mentioned, we went through several gyrations, took a look at it as single family, we looked at it as multi-family, we looked at it as commercial fringe. And I guess it's kind of part of an overarching kind of either a planning zone or is it part of overarching PRD or PUD?
No.
It's not. Okay. Well, we saw some exhibit that showed kind of that the commercial fringe made sense with buffering up against the existing commercial fringe as long as it's located on Morris Road. So the client elected to go with the commercial fringe zoning for that reason.
And my advice was either to sit on the property if you want to use it for rental, or if you are interested in moving to redevelop it, to go ahead and make the application. So it was vacant. It looks like they may have recently got kind of a tenant in there.
I'm not sure all the agent. I spoke to him yesterday. He said he is renting currently.
And so, do you know what their plan is then?
I don't. Not exactly as far as timeline with that renter.
Of course, explain to Mr. Roundtree what we aren't looking for is the Old Fort Parkway or Franklin Road scenario where you have a lot of those houses that have just been sort of shoehorned into commercial uses. And so we'd like to see it incorporated as the larger area. And I think what you saw was a master plan that showed the surrounding development. And so I would want to see this tie into it, not just sort of be a little 1.6 acre island, but have street connection or a driveway connection to the north so that you aren't required to go on the public roads to access private sites, or if it were residential to tie into the residential. I think, is that what you're talking about?
That's been communicated. We got to tie into the, to the development plan because he wanted me to look into that. And he also, I did tell him that you didn't want it to be retrofitted as a house that's now a business and have that kind of patchwork look. So he's under full awareness of that as well.
So the property to the north of it is in city limits and it's commercial fringe, correct?
Yes.
So really it's an extension of that commercial fringe in a sense. The difference is you're in the county and they're in the city. I've got a little concern, and I may or may not should be concerned, but I know with that cemetery there, is there a reason why we're not annexing that cemetery? Because if there's something that happened to that cemetery, would it be advantageous to go ahead and annex that area as well?
Our maps show that area already in the city, the cemetery.
It is in the city?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good.
The Hale Cemetery, I believe.
Okay.
H-A-L-E.
Okay. I just didn't want it to get left out, because if it
I
got
would've
left
done
out,
that.
then there would be the
Yeah.
concern if something happened to the cemetery, we would have absolutely no authority over a piece of property that would be in the city. So
Right.
if it's already there, that's great.
So I have a stupid question. It's the chicken or the egg. So this commercial fringe, and we're saying we don't want a renter, but they got a renter. So does the renter stay there forever? I mean, how does that work?
It is sort of chicken and egg. My advice was I really wanted them, if they were ready to move forward with commercial development, then make the application, otherwise not make an application. So I'm not sure. I haven't really got to talk to the applicants about this. I've mostly been talking to Clyde. I mean,
The single-family home would become a legally established non-conforming use if it were rezoned to the commercial fringe.
But in perpetuity, right?
Well, subject to the limitations of our zoning ordinance, in the event of damage or destruction or abandonment.
I'm with you. So you haven't really accomplished what you were looking for? Well,
probably not, but no.
So does that need to be, I'm lost here. Why, you just want it zoned commercial fringe now with, but no plan in sight as to what you're going to do with the property?
Well, we did a concept plan, Ken, as far as making sure the property was suitable for some sort of commercial development, parking capacities, and the size of the building. And as far as, it's kind of curious, they're not in a super hurry to get it zoned. They just want to be positioned, I guess is the best way to say it. And as far as when the renter came in, when it was unoccupied, I don't really know that part of the scenario.
Would it be a horrible thing if we approved the zoning contingent with the demolition of the home?
I think we generally try to avoid, when they're requesting a bulk zoning, to place conditions on bulk zoning.
We do try to avoid that, but at times we have placed conditions on.
I think we did some out there on Cherry Lane that way, where there was a barn or something out there and it was conditioned that that barn had to be demolished before it was approved.
I think that was more in conjunction with the annexation.
Yeah, for a fire protection issue on that.
This does have an annexation application as well.
Yeah, there is.
I think in that instance, the zoning wasn't conditioned upon, there weren't any conditions on the zoning. That was a matter of them.
Probably should have talked about this when we were annexing it. Yeah, but the annexing is kind of conditional on the zoning too, isn't it? I mean, if we don't give it the zoning that they're asking for, then the annexation wouldn't be effective either. So there is a direct relationship between the annexation and the zoning.
I think we would want to annex it regardless of zoning. I think if it were annexed in single family, we'd rather it be in the city considering it's so surrounded. They may not want it, but we would.
Well, I wouldn't want to annex it as residential personally, because there's really no gain to annexing it.
I do know there's some, from a financing standpoint, there's some natural protections built in related to being able to obtain conventional money against a commercial property with a residential use on it. I mean, there'll have some challenges with that moving forward if they were to do this.
The people making the application, they're an investment group who just buy a property out of Nashville and kind of sit on it, I think.
Yeah, I think the house, because I asked them what condition the house was in, I think it's a pretty livable house. It wasn't like a kind of a dilapidated situation, so I think that that's kind of, I think it's more of a positioning, and I think what you said, Margaret, is there's someone in the house, upon a changing leaser, I guess, or renter, that's where the break would be. They wouldn't be able to re-rent that to somebody else.
Somebody could keep living there, but it couldn't be vacant. I think we talked about it being vacant for some period of time before losing that.
Okay.
A change in tenant and occupants would not cancel their zoning, but wouldn't cancel their state law grandfather rights.
For renting it?
If we annex it and zone it, this tenant moves out and another one moves in less than 30 months, their zoning or their grandfathered use would continue under state law.
I think we talked about the fact that it was vacant for some amount of time, and then, but now there's somebody in there.
Yeah, I'm not sure where the person came in and spoke to me.
Maybe a good use of a deferral. I'm not sure that with the lack of understanding as far as what their intentions are, that it's a good idea to approve something as commercial fringe when it may never be commercial fringe. I mean, it could be continued to be used as a residential property from this point forward, perpetuity, as far as that goes, as long as you had the same renter's name on it, I guess. So, unless there's any opposition, I would move for deferral on this.
I think my only comment would be, can we do that to schedule a public hearing? Because we have so many days to schedule a public hearing if a complete application's been made with the money. I mean, you could defer at the public hearing, I think, but can you defer when you're scheduling, when you need to schedule?
Our zoning ordinance requires a public hearing within 75 days of the submittal. Of course, that would be unless Mr. Roundtree, representing the applicants, consents to not having it scheduled within 75 days of the application. And I think If we don't schedule it for February the 5th, that the next public hearing date, possibly, the next possible public hearing date would be outside of that 75-day window prescribed by ordinance.
Okay, so if we would go ahead and approve the public hearing for it, then we could defer it at the public hearing, I guess, and resolve the issue then if it hadn't been worked out by that point. And I think you see the importance of having it worked out now by that point.
And exactly what am I exactly trying to accomplish? To have no one in the building by the time it's rezoned?
I think it would be ideal if the building were demolished.
Demolished?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that there's no potential of homeless population or anybody living in the property.
Or a conversion of it to an office.
Right.
Or what?
Insurance, whatever.
Convert the structure to
Convert
an
the
office
structure
building.
into an office building, as happens from time to
And
time.
Franklin Road's a perfect example
I
of
thought we were
it.
trying to avoid that patchwork.
We are, that's what, yeah.
Okay.
That's what, Mr. Smotherman mentioned demolishing the house so there wouldn't be another tenant.
Oh, I
I said,
see.
or, and business.
Oh, you said or?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
Took it the other way.
Yeah, I thought you were saying go.
Okay, so in that case, I'll go ahead and move that we set a public hearing.
Second.
All those in favor of setting a public hearing, say aye.
Aye.
Any? Go ahead, sorry. No, you go ahead.
Now, as far as your clarification, so I'm going to go back and say, for us to receive commercial frame zoning, the building will have to be demolished. That's what I need to tell the client.
That's where you're at with me.
What's that?
That's where you're at with me.
I don't think that was a condition for setting the public hearing.
I just want to make sure I communicate when I get before.
It's not, but I mean, unless you want to set a deferral at the public hearing, I think.
Not to have it demolished in the next 2 weeks, but I think the applicant needs to know that there's some resistance here to giving an open-ended commercial fringe zoning with no plan for what it's going to happen, no timeline, just an open-ended zoning on something that some of us might apparently feel could be abused. So that doesn't mean they won't be persuaded in 3 weeks to
I'll get more
approve it.
clarification from him for sure,
Right.
and see what he wants to do.
But I think anticipate some resistance if it comes up just exactly the way it is today.
Okay.
So I believe we had a motion and it passed. Is that true?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. All right, so I'm moving on.
Move on while you can.
All right, zoning application to amend the Old Fort Plaza PUD for approximately 5.4 acres located along Old Fort Parkway in order to modify the site and building design. Autumn Plaza Partners applicant. Ms. Rush.
Just to let y'all know, the applicant was not able to attend the meeting today and has requested in writing to have this hearing put out one additional month to the March 4th.
11.
March 11th. Thank you. The March date. 2 digits, okay. So I can give you a brief overview in terms of what they're doing. So the plan unit development was approved on December 15th, 2016, for a specific, it's a plan unit development with a mixed-use building up front towards Old Fort Parkway. And then there's 2 additional buildings that are earmarked for seniors. One is an assistant care facility where they would have care on site. And then the 3rd building is an apartment complex that would be age restricted. So what they had indicated to us they wanted to do was change the configuration of the number of bedrooms. They wanted to reduce the number of single bedroom units and increase it to a couple of the 2-bedroom units. So their criteria was trying to make those changes, but not make a lot of changes to the site. They still had to comply with the parking requirements, setback requirements, all those things that were established with the original plan development. As a result of their configuration change, they also wanted to change the architecture, and that architecture resulted in the building shifting more than 15 feet in one direction or the other. When you have a building site plan change of that significance, it does require that we have them bring back the zoning for the Planning Commission and the City Council to adopt. It's something that's beyond any administrative review level approval. So with the tables, I try to put an outline there in terms of building area, the building number of units. So the senior living apartments were originally for 52 units. It remains at 52 units. You do see the change in the number of the 1 and 2 bedroom configurations. And then the parking, they are complying with the parking standards. The assisted living or the senior residences, likewise, that one had 85 units. They were all 1 bedroom. It's now being reduced down to 65 units. So there are some 2 bedroom units that are going in. And likewise, they are complying with the parking requirements. The concern that staff has with the new site plan layout is that they've shifted the building so much to the west property line that their buildings are butting right up to the type C buffer. So there's no space differentiation between the vegetation of that type C buffer and the building itself. So they actually had patios extending into that buffer. There's back doors, and so that's part of why they're asking for the March hearing date, is to try and fix some of those issues so they're not conflicted with the landscape buffer itself. I'm happy to answer any questions on behalf of the applicant that I can. Otherwise, staff recommends that it does get set for that hearing date.
Did you say it was going from 85 units to 65 units?
Right, yes. I'm sorry, 85 down to 65 for the assisted living.
Both the stapled booklet and the one that's got the banding on it, both say 85 still. Is that something different than?
I have to pull up the last page of the booklet that has the green and blue map is where they showed the before and after, with the green being the original, the current plan, development, and then the blue being the revised plan that they're proposing. If you could zoom into it, I don't know if we can zoom into it. Here. Is this the?
But that doesn't pull back to the so I guess this is...
Maybe this is the...
Is it?
Instead of Jagger, you did, what do you call that? Not flat.
I see back there on that page where you're talking about, but on page 11, on both pieces of material we've got, still show 85.
That is part of the challenges that we did have with the program book. They have a lot of cleanup language. There's some conflicts with, I noticed with the landscaping, and then the HVAC units, they've indicated they're going to be roof mounted, but then there's a sentence in here that they're ground mounted. So we just got the program book version late last week, so there's a lot of cleanup language that has to happen for the hearing.
So it's
Beds versus units. So the bed count's not changing.
the number of bedrooms has decreased by, or the number of units has decreased by 20, but the total number of bedrooms is still at 85. Just he's added some 2-bedroom units instead of all 1-bedroom units.
Why don't we just have it
It's a little misleading.
And then set the public hearing at the next meeting.
Matthew, can we bring it back as a workshop item next month? They've agreed in writing to the March hearing date.
I think that they would probably like to get a hearing date scheduled, so if you wanted to go ahead and schedule it for March the 11th, and then we'll bring it back next month and give you an update, and if they have not made significant enough progress, then we can request that they withdraw the application at that point for further work on it.
Okay.
So is there a motion for a public hearing on March, what'd you say?
11.
Move for public hearing on March 11th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. I hate to take a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Good deal. All right. Zoning application for approximately 1.11 acres located along South Academy Street, north of East State Street, to be rezoned from Commercial Highway and CCO to PUD Greenhouse Ministries and CCO Greenhouse Ministries applicant.
I'll try to fill in for Mr. Kerr once again.
Okay.
So this is a zoning request that we have received for a property that's located at the southeast corner of South Academy Street and East Sevier Street. You'll recall several months ago there was a request by Greenhouse Ministries to abandon the right-of-way of that East Sevier Street stub that goes into that stubs into the cemetery. They have since abandoned that abandonment request, pun intended, and they are no longer wishing to incorporate that right-of-way into their development. So the total acreage is 1.11 acres. It would be a two-story building that they are proposing. Let's pull up the site plan. Two-story building that would include affordable housing units, rental units on the second floor, which I think there would be a time limit on how long the residents could live in those units. And there would also be offices for Greenhouse Ministries on the first floor, as well as flex space for Greenhouse Ministries, meeting space, and a kitchen as well, and I believe a nurse's station as well. So I think one of the main purposes of this request is to provide that affordable housing component for the area. The property is currently zoned Commercial Highway and City Core Overlay District. It still remains in the City Core Overlay District, but they're proposing to zone it as a planned development. I'll show you a picture of the proposed architecture. The building would be located very close to the sidewalk of South Academy Street, so it would present very, very walkable with the parking on the side and in the rear, and the building would be located framing the street along the front property line. And we'll need to schedule a public hearing on this. We recommend a February 5th public hearing date, and Mr. Taylor, I believe, will have some additional information from you on this request as well.
Thank you, Mr. It's the best I got. As Matthew said, this is for Greenhouse Ministries. They have purchased both of these parcels, I think a number of years ago, and really want to expand their program here. So I'm sure each of you know their existing facility is on the other side of Academy Street. And so this would be an extension of some services there. They're going to leave their retail operations there. The bottom floor of this two-story building would be mainly for training, offices. There's going to be a small kitchen in there where they're not only trying to bulk feed people, they're really trying to teach people how to cook meals at home. Still some financial aid. There will be a small clinic where maybe a nurse shows up once a week, things like that. It's not an everyday thing. So I think it's a good use, a good service for our community that we've seen a need for. We've tried to design the site so it has a very downtown feel. All the parking's in the rear side, as Matthew said. The building's pulled very close to the street. The architecture has that same desire. We tried to break up those facades. It looks like multiple buildings in there, so it's got a very downtown feel. But we've also added a sloped roof on there to respect the residential that we've got in the area. Quite a few of the other buildings in the area have that sloped shingled roof as well. We're also trying to incorporate a few green development options. I think we got some solar panels planned on some of that roof. We're trying to incorporate some of the downtown streetscape master plan elements, such as on-street parking, decorative lighting, street trees, sidewalks, all along Academy Street there as well. And then I think we've got one existing residential home that buffers us In the southeast corner there we planned a buffer and then we got a fence all along that side. So the residential component of our project, we've got 17 one-bedroom units or rooms upstairs, and then we've got one two-bedroom facility. That two-bedroom unit, if you will house the on-site manager. That manager will be there 24/7, help the people that live there in their day-to-day. Anybody that lives here will be part of the program. So while it will be affordable in nature, they will be part of our program to get their life back on track, I guess, is the best way to go about that. Anybody that lives there will have to have a job. There are certain requirements to go into that. It's not a homeless shelter. Each of the rooms will have its own little kitchenette, a bedroom, and a bathroom. And so I think the only thing that's really shared is there's a vending area and then a a laundromat inside that will be shared amongst the residents there. So I'll be happy to answer any questions. And Matthew did mention there is a time limit. I don't remember exactly how many months that is. Do you remember, Julie? How many, the lease time? Is it a 12-month program? I think so. It's either a 12 or 18-month program. That's the max that they could be there. So there's a very defined step and schedule there.
I'll make just some kind of general comments. I think this is a great project for the community. It'll serve a lot of needs. I do think because of how the site has been used in the past, lighting is a very important thing at this site. So applying some of those same septet principles here because the living component is really important. So I want to strongly encourage you to look at that from the standpoint of landscaping and how the site's used and to make sure it's as safe as possible.
I think that we could write into the program book that we would comply with those septet requirements at the construction plan if that's an acceptable way to address that. We have no issue with that.
The only comment that I'll make is I'm glad to see that you're considerably above the required parking spaces, because this lot at different times is used as a parking lot.
Yes, sir.
So I think that was a very good idea.
And Matt, are the kitchenettes designed to actually cook in, or is it more of a, heat up something?
I think they have a one or two burner stove, so they will be cooked there. So the goal is for them to be able to, it's an apartment. The only thing shared is the laundromat services.
Okay. I think that's good.
I remember the abandonment of the right-of-way, there was issues with the neighbor. Were those issues worked out?
So we had,
is it just you abandoned that idea?
We actually met with the neighbor. We actually did a couple of concept plans for them. One with them leaving the existing buildings, one with them taking the buildings down, building new, with both the with them having the right of way, with them out, and so we left it up to them, and so they came back and said they felt better about leaving the right of way in place for their future development potential. So we said fine, and so after we got that, we went back to staff and said, hey, let's just abandon it. We don't need it that bad. We felt differently. We didn't see that it benefited either property, but again, it's their property, their decision. So.
And their plan that they have before you actually takes advantage of that being a right-of-way by putting a secondary access point onto East Sevier.
If there are no other questions, we have a motion to set a public hearing on February the 5th.
Make a motion to set the public hearing on February 5th.
Second. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That passes. So now we have staff reports and other business.
I believe the screen has I'm just kidding.
Throw her under the bus.
I don't have any.
All right. Anything else?
Nothing from me.
All right. We're adjourned.